Isaac Newton was born according to the Julian calendar, which was in use in England at the time, on Christmas Day, 25th of December 1642, in the county of Lincolnshire. He was born 3 months after the death of his father, a prosperous farmer also named Isaac Newton. When Newton was 3, his mother remarried and went to live with her new husband, the Reverend Barnabas Smith, leaving her son in the care of his maternal grandmother. From the age of about 12 until he was 17, Newton was educated at the King's School, which taught him Latin but no mathematics. He was removed from school, and by October 1659 he was to be found at Woolsthorpe by Colsterworth, where his mother, widowed for a second time, attempted to make a farmer of him. Newton absolutely hated farming. Henry Stokes, master of the King's School, persuaded his mother to send him back to school so that he might complete his education. In June 1661, he was admitted to Trinity College in Cambridge on the recommendation of his uncle. In 1665, he discovered the generalized binomial theorem and began to develop a mathematical theory that later became calculus. In April of 1667, he returned to Cambridge, and in October he was elected as a Fellow of Trinity. Fellows were required to become ordained priests. Although this was not enforced in the Restoration years, he was later appointed Lucian Professor of Mathematics in 1669. During that time, any fellow of the College of Cambridge or Oxford was required to take holy orders and become an ordained Anglican priest. However, the terms of the Lucian professorship required that the holder not be active in the church. Newton argued that this should exempt him from the ordination requirement, and Charles II, whose permission was needed, accepted his argument. Most modern historians believe that Newton and Leibniz developed calculus independently, although with very different notations. The Principia has been called a book dense with the theory and application of the infinitesimal calculus in modern times. Starting in 1699, other members of the Royal Society accused Leibniz of plagiarism. From 1670 to 1672, Newton lectured on optics. During this period, he investigated the refraction of light, demonstrating that the multicolored spectrum produced by a prism could be recomposed into white light by a lens and a second prism. He also showed that colored light does not change its property by separating out a colored beam and shining it on various objects. Newton noted that regardless of whether it was reflected, scattered, or transmitted, it remained the same color. From his work, he constructed the first known functioning refracting telescope, today known as the Newtonian telescope. In 1671, the Royal Society asked for a demonstration of his reflecting telescope. When Robert Hooke criticized some of Newton's ideas, Newton was so offended that he withdrew from public debate. In his hypothesis of light in 1675, Newton posited the existence of the ether to transmit forces between particles. In 1704, Newton published Optics, in which he expounded his theory of light. He considered light to be made of extremely subtle particles. In 1679, Newton returned to his work as celestial mechanics by considering gravitation and its effects on the orbits of planets, with reference to Kepler's laws of planetary motion. This followed stimulation by a brief exchange of letters in 1679 to 1680 with Robert Hooke, who had been appointed to manage the Royal Society's correspondence, and who opened a correspondence intended to elicit contributions from Newton to Royal Society transactions. After the exchanges with Hooke, Newton worked out proof that the elliptical form of the planetary orbits would result from a centrifugal force inversely proportional to a square of the radius vector. Newton communicated his results to Edmund Halley and to the Royal Society, which was copied into Royal Society's register books in December 1684. The Principia was published on the 5th of July 1687 with encouragement and financial help from Edmund Halley. In this work, Newton stated the three universal laws of motion. Together, these laws describe the relationship between any object, the forces acting upon it, and the resulting motion, laying the foundation for classical mechanics. They contributed to many advances during the Industrial Revolution, which soon followed and were not improved upon for more than 200 years. He used the Latin word gravitas, which meant weight, for the effect that would become known as gravity. Newton made clear his heliocentric view of the solar system. For Newton, it was not precisely the center of the sun or any other body that could be considered at rest, but rather the common center of gravity of the earth, the sun, and all the planets is to be esteemed the center of the world. And this center of gravity either is at rest or moves uniformly forward in a right line. Newton's idea of an invisible force able to act over large distances led to him being criticized for introducing occult agencies into science. Later, in the second edition of the Principia, published in 1713, Newton firmly rejected such criticisms in the concluding General Scholium, writing that it was enough that the phenomena implied a gravitational attraction, as they did, but they did not so far indicate its cause, and it was both unnecessary and improper to frame the hypothesis of things that were not implied by the phenomena. Isaac Newton was made president of the Royal Society in 1703 and an associate of the French Académie des Sciences. In his position at the Royal Society, Newton made an enemy of John Flamsteed by prematurely publishing Flamsteed's Hysteria Coelestis Britannica, which Newton had used in his studies. In April of 1705, Queen Anne knighted Newton during a royal visit to Trinity College in Cambridge. Newton was the second scientist to be knighted after Sir Francis Bacon. Towards the end of his life, Sir Isaac Newton took up residence at Cranberry Park near Winchester with his niece and her husband until his death in 1727. Sir Isaac Newton died in his sleep in London on the 20th of March 1727 and was buried at Westminster Abbey.